Well, this is going to be interesting.
Activate music mode.
Welcome to Cherry's far too long autistic breakdown of her favorite obsession of this entire century, and a thorough analysis of basically everything I could think of this fantastic property that has captured my entire mind over the last several years. This is both a breakdown and a character analysis of every moment of Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and, implicitly, a call to action to get Rise back on the air with a third season through as many as the original cast and crew want to create. The show was sniped in its prime, and I refuse to give up on it. Without further ado, Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is, for those who don't know, a animated cartoon of a generation of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that came out in 2018. It was, in my opinion, far and away the best generation of the Turtles that has ever existed. And it was shafted by corporate manhandling, a shuffling of ownership, and it is all around a brilliant universe with brilliant art direction, brilliant character writing, and a brilliant plot with a lot of potential. And if you have seen it, and if you haven't, watch it again. And if you can, tweet, create, and make anything under the hashtag #SaveRotTMNT, because we're getting this show back, whether they like it or not. I will pry it from your cold, dead hands. For a quick rundown of the plot for those who have not seen it and are going to binge it immediately after this video, aren't you? It is a prequel story of the rise of the Turtles, of the brothers. It starts with them completely new to any concept of heroism or even training. This version of the Turtles deviates the most from previous generations, and they're basically just teenagers. Sure, they have some super soldier abilities or some pre-ninja training, but they weren't raised for this. They were built for it, but they weren't raised to do anything vigilante, to do anything heroic. They're just kids right now. And the show follows that transition from just some kids in New York who happen to be turtles to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The origins, plot, reason they mutated, the basic fundamentals of this world, there's magic now. They're all different than what you've come to know if you know the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles already. And I argue this is for the better. It is brilliantly realized. There are yokai, there is magic specifically unique to the Hamato family. And why that is, their connection to Shredder, who Shredder is, and the general deep interlocking lore has so much potential and is already fleshed out so excellently, even with their limited resources and time to do so, that it's fantastic and it's ripe for creativity. Okay, so with the heavy endorsement of needing to watch the show as officially as you can, I want to break down the lore of Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, starting from the beginning, not episode 1, not the beginning of the Turtles, the beginning. The very first thing that we know happened on this timeline is in someplace in rural Japan. The Krang invaded. We know it was at least 1,000 years ago, if not more. Their goal was the same that the Krang have always had as a primary goal, to terraform and control and decimate the planet. Bring about the image of the Krang. Now, these Krang are significantly more powerful and significantly more intimidating than the ones from 2012, and while I'm not as familiar with the other with the other TMNT generations, they seem to be the most well, at the very least, eldritch horror of the pre-existing crang generations. 4 warriors, which are color-coded to the turtles, and are probably part of the Hamato clan, and also a kind of a retroactive understanding as to why Splinter decided to give them the colors that he did when he color-coded them, which is just such a tiny, intricate detail of explaining why they're the colors they are and relating it back to their heritage that is just, you didn't need to do that, but I'm really glad you did. So, as far back as we can, the Krang invade. 4 warriors find a way to not defeat the Krang, but to seal them and their armada and their technodrome in a prison dimension, locked with a mystical key that cannot be destroyed. What they were unaware of was that one Krang, with no resources and no comrades, was left behind on our planet. Now, this Krang couldn't do a full world domination by itself, but it could do damage, and it did. This Krang is the entity misidentified as a yokai, a thing that exists in this universe, though I postulate that it exists in this universe as a product of this Krang. So that remaining Krang, unable to commit a full-scale invasion on its own, or able to unlock its brethren, decided to play a long game. It took advantage of a clan that was under duress, a peaceful clan called the Foot Clan, and its leader, Orokusaki. Now, Orokusaki made a deal with this remaining Krang to get power, unknowing that it would corrupt him indefinitely. The Krang offered him the Caitlin Yatelin. The dark armor. When Orokusaki put this armor on, he became the Shredder. He led the Foot Clan down an evil path, and a branch of the clan, led by his daughter, Karai, became the Hamato clan with the sole purpose of defeating the Shredder. Now, Karai managed to unlock and connect a source of magic inside herself that would become heritable to the entire Hamato clan, and is their greatest and only weapon against the Shredder. It is the only thing that might be able to take him down. Now, I have a lot of theories about Hamato Nimpo, how it works, how it spreads, and what it is. You see, while this is never fully explored in the show proper, yokai seem to originate from this one lone Krang, and the Hamato Nimpo, if not all magic, seem to be a mutated derivative of the Krang's blood. At the series finale, before the movie, we are taken to the location of what is the most sacred place in the Hidden City, and the only source of Empyrean. And for a quick moment, we see that the source of Empyrean, the source of the yokai's power, and the most powerful substance on the planet, is a derivative and is produced by the corpse of this remaining Krang. So I am almost certain that the death of, or the machinations before the death of, this lone Krang created and then enabled all magic and yokai on the planet moving forward. Which means that yokai kind has probably only ever existed as long as the Krang have. And what I additionally think this means, and it is definitively shown that the nimpo that the Hamato clan utilizes is controllable and lockable by the Krang. I also believe that their nimpo is core based on whatever substance mutation genetics that the Krang brought to allow for magic. And perhaps Karai's connection to Orokusaki, who has been infected with this dark armor, is the avenue in which she was able to twist that magic into something good, creating the nimpo that she now harbors. Regardless, this nimpo is unique to the Hamato clan, and it is a heritable, but also spreadable through emotion, magic system that is unique to each individual, their personality, their spirit, their desires, but is also compounded with the love of their family, and also seems to invoke or enable immortality in a spirit sense. There seems to be no evidence that anyone but the Hamato clan can do this, but every single Hamato who has ever lived and died has become a spirit that then watches over and compounds the nimpo. It's like one for all, and seemingly there's no other afterlife to compare it to. It's immortality for Hamatos only, which is very interesting. Regardless, Karai sacrifices herself to seal the Shredder, unable to fully defeat him on her own, as the clan is new and the nimpo must be incredibly fresh and thus at its weakest. She can only perpetually seal him and herself in a different sub-prison dimension, one that seems to be significantly more rudimentary and more easily accessed than the one the crang were locked into, and seemingly this conflict happened almost 500 years after the initial invasion, as marked by Krang Prime saying that they've been in the prison dimension for 1,000 years, and other ancillary lore telling us that the Shredder has been sealed for 500. So 500 years pass in a stalemate. Karai and the Shredder are locked in this micro-prison dimension, alive and conscious, and the Hamato clan and the Foot clan are playing an enormously high-stakes game of keep-away. As the generations go on, the Hamato clan is tasked with and duty-bound to thwart the Foot clan in any possible way they can, and to keep two things from them: the pieces of the dark armor, which are spread across the world and hidden, and the Krang key, because the Foot clan has been twisted and repurposed not just to serve the Shredder, but to serve the reintroduction of the Krang. The Shredder is only a means to an end, he's a middleman. Now, the Foot clan doesn't know that, but they are aware of the Krang and worship them like gods, where they worship the Shredder like their king. Now, this stalemate persists, seemingly with no progress on the side of the Foot clan for almost 500 years, until Hamato Yoshi is born in... Now, this is just guessing, because I don't believe we have actual dedicated ages, and if we do, it was never mentioned in the show, and thus there's a lot of wiggle room here. But he clearly grew up in the 80s, and so I'm gonna say he was born around the 70s. And he is one of the first, or at least the first when there's no other options, as the Hamato clan seems to have been shrinking as time went on, into a single family group rather than an entire clan, to reject his duties as a Hamato. He barely believes that the Shredder is real, that any of this mystic nonsense is real. He has no access to his nimpo and isn't entirely sure that it's a thing. And this, at first, from our perspective as viewers, seeing this out of order, we see him as someone who was being irresponsible. But if you think about it, it kind of looks like a cult from the outside, without any evidence. I can see where a young Hamato Yoshi would have come from with this. This practice, these duties, took his mother away from him when he was a child. And there's been no whisper of the Foot or the Shredder for hundreds of years. There's no reason to believe the things he's being told, and it's destroying his family from his perspective. So he rejects it outright. His grandfather can't get him to take this seriously or to dedicate himself to it. Instead, he rebels by becoming a martial arts superstar, using his training to frivolously exist as a celebrity, and becomes on stage Jujitsu, having a long series of popular movies. And he completely cuts off his ties to his family. Not completely emotionally, as we'll see, but the last time he sees his grandfather is not on good terms. And he lives like that for a long time. until he meets a specific woman, or spider, to be specific, Big Mama. And does she have a real name? Is that her title or her name? Big Mama is weird. He meets her as a human on the set of one of his movies while she was being his driver. They start a whirlwind romance for who knows how many years, and eventually he intends to marry her, only to discover that she is actually a yokai, his first interaction with magic at all, and, you know, your would-be fiancé kidnapping you while a 10-foot spider can't be exactly a positive experience for you. She turns out to not only be a spider yokai with bad intentions, she's also basically a mob boss for the entire hidden city, the society and hub for all yokai kind. It seems that at some point in the 500 years of relative peace for the Hamato clan, the yokai have been slowly driven underground, and live now in a place called the Hidden City, unable to make it to the surface. Some people consider this a problem, and well, obviously it is, but you know. Now, the Hidden City is said to be a city, and in the first episode, April describes it as a mystic hidden city deep under New York. But see, what Donnie says directly before she corrects him is that it's a tertiary metaverse, which I think is more accurate. I don't think the Hidden City is a city in size, and it's not directly below New York. I don't think if you dug down in Times Square, eventually you'd make it to a cavern that is the Hidden City. You have to get to the Hidden City through portals. It's obviously a pocket dimension. And if it's actually physically under the earth, it probably spans the entire underneath the core. It's not just one species, it's a million different species of magical beings. They haven't been sequestered into one little city. It has to be its own, like, pocket, infinitely large space, right? But that's neither here nor there. Turns out that Big Mama is a very influential mob boss in the Hidden City, one that runs the infamous Battle Nexus. And she set her sights on Lujitsu for one reason and one reason only, and it wasn't to make spider babies. She wanted him to be her new champion in the Battle Nexus to drive ratings. So she forced him to fight for years in her Nexus, until eventually, in protest, he took a vow of nonviolence. We don't know for how long, but he just stops fighting. Now, we can step back for a moment and cut to about 10 years prior to this, a sheep yokai named Baron Draxum. Now, this man does not have a counterpart in previous TMNT generations, neither does Big Mama, but he is integral to the story of the Turtles in Rise. He is a yokai who is a triple threat, a warring warrior scientist, and having that in mind, he is both intelligent and bloodthirsty, and also incredibly loyal to yokai kind in general and the Hidden City. There has been a prophecy for who knows how long, probably around 500 years, in yokai society, that some unknown threat will destroy the yokai. They don't know what it is exactly, but Baron Draxum has a theory. He thinks it's humans. Humans have driven them underground, and it's only a matter of time, he thinks, until they snuff them out completely. So he wants to fight back. He implores the High Council of the Hidden City. We don't get a lot of information about them, but they seem to be some amount of parliament council hierarchy of general laws and order in the yokai society. Unsure if it's elected, they kind of seem divinely put in there considering the structural nature of their being. But he implores them to take action, that it is clearly the yokai against the humans, and that he has a plan to change the humans. Not wipe them out. though eventually he does take that approach. No, he wants to mutate them. He wants to turn them into yokai so that they are forced to accept them as they are. Because...
And when everyone's super, no one will be.
So, yeah, move over Superfly. Baron Draxum did it first. The Council flatly reject this. There's no evidence that it's humans specifically that are the threat in the prophecy. Though, I mean, it's kind of it's not an unlogical leap. We can infer from later events and also pre-events that the prophecy is actually referring to the Krang's return. But given the information that Baron Draxum has, I mean, yeah, kinda. I'm not defending him, it's just, I mean, they're living underground for a reason, right? Anyway, he resolves to fix this problem on his own. He knows it's the humans. He is determined to save his people. So, for the next 10 years, he develops a mutagen. Specifically for two purposes: to wage actual war and to mutate the humans indiscriminately. So, a dual plan of exterminate and transform. Great guy, Baron Draxum. Love him. I don't. He throws people off roofs. Now 10 years later, Lujitsu is a slave in the Battle Nexus and has been for many years, is now a celebrity in the Hidden City itself as one of the greatest warriors that have ever lived. Baron Draxum has completed his mutagen and he is ready to create his masterpiece. Soldiers. So, to test his mutagen, he decides to take regular animals, 4 turtles of completely different species, and then mutate them deliberately with the best warrior DNA he could find. Now, I think that Baron Draxum miscalculated a lot and then got insanely lucky at the same time. Because, as we all know, martial prowess isn't heritable. That's not how that works. And if Baron Draxum had chosen any other remarkable martial human to mutate with the intent of giving those skills to his creations, it wouldn't have worked. You just would have gotten half humans, not half humans who are skilled. But unbeknownst to him, he chose a Hamato. And with that came the Hamato nimpo. And I didn't go into heavy detail about what the Hamato nimpo is capable of, but it seems to pass on the knowledge and the power subconsciously and physically into the next generations or the people who have been accepted as family. As you will see later, it doesn't have to be blood, as April is a Hamato. Would that be April Hamato O'Neil or April O'Neil Hamato? This is probably a question Donnie has asked many times. I wonder which one they chose. So the Hamato nimpo does allow for heritable skill, as well as a host of other unique to the individual abilities that are powered and intensified by trust in one's family. So when Baron Draxum inadvertently decided to choose a Hamato as his base genetics for the human half, he unwittingly made the perfect choice for super soldiers. Now, this is getting into headcanon territory, but I also believe that he didn't just willy-nilly mutate them in the same way that mutants will come to exist later through the Ooze. See, I have a bit of a fictional biology obsession. I don't go as thorough as I've seen some do, but I want to figure out the logic behind how something like this could work. So I think I've figured out the mutagen and what it does to make a mutant. So what I think this ooze does is it takes the base genetics of the thing it first is injected into, and the next foreign DNA that it comes in contact with, if not directed, it then randomly tries to combine these two traits as evenly as it can, almost in an AI fashion. It takes some aspects of one and some aspects of the other. If left undirected, this can have very wacky or unfortunate results, or really good results. It's basically a randomized generator with all of the traits of both species. What I think Baron Draxum did, specifically for the 4 turtles that he was intending to be the forefront and the commanders of his army against humanity, he wanted to specialize them. So I think that he actually altered the DNA of the turtles before mutating them first, as well as this machine you see directing beneficial traits to be more dominant in the merging process. So what I think this means is that, 1, I don't think the turtles are Hamato Yoshi's children. I mean, they are. I'm not just saying that to justify my other shit. I don't care. This is fiction. You people are insane. What the hell is wrong with you? No, I'm saying this because I think they're clones. I think they are modified half clones of Hamato Yoshi. The Ooze took half of his DNA and did not extrapolate upon it to make a new person. It copied him and then took half and the beneficial traits of the respective species of turtle. So, let me give you a quick rundown of which turtles were chosen. Because, unlike other previous generations of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, they are not all the same species. Raphael is an alligator snapping turtle, which subvariety is not known, but we also don't have a lot of information in real life about what distinguishes different alligator snapping turtles. Alligator snapping turtle is actually somewhat of a recent category in the first place. It's actually really neat. Go watch Garden State Tortoise. He is large, he is spiky, and based on my interpretation of the lore, I'm pretty sure Baron Draxum enhanced the actual muscle of the turtle before turning him into Raphael to make him the tank. He was built to be strong, and I don't think he's going to stop growing. I think as he gets older, he's just going to become a kaiju, and it's going to be amazing. Big Daddy indeed. Anyway, you didn't hear me say that. Donatello is a spiny soft-shell turtle. Now, completely irrelevant fun note, spiny soft-shell turtles' spines in the name are actually along the rim of their shells in real life, but Donnie does have actual spines on his shell, but they are along his literal spine rather than along the rim, which is a design choice that I'm pretty sure they just used for aesthetics, but is definitely a good one. I think it looks great, and also kind of makes sense for the mutation idea that I'm having about the Ooze. If the Ooze is not sentient, but pseudo-intentional, it would be trying to merge traits in as functional a process as possible, especially inside of these specialized pods that are meant to make this as ideal as can be. So I'm pretty sure, it's almost like a translation error of spines going along the spines, even though that wouldn't have necessarily been the case in the original turtle, which is neat. I like that. And along the lines of Draxum doing all of this very intentionally, I'm fairly sure that he hypercharged the IQ of the soft shell to make him the guy in the chair for his theoretical Black Ops squad of human extermination. I think Donnie's a genius because he was made to be a genius, which allows for me and the story to handwave him as being actually the smartest creature on the planet, right? Which, obviously, right? Mikey is an ornate box turtle. Now, I think that this unintentional Hamato nimpo that Draxum didn't intend for accidentally but beneficially compounded Mikey's original purpose. I think that Draxum intended Mikey to be the magical powerhouse already, prior to his mutation, and influenced the box turtle before it becoming Mikey already to have a magical affinity. And then that natural affinity was then double compounded with the already powerful Hamato Nimpo, which was then incidentally compounded again by the fact that Hamato Nimpo is enhanced and unlocked through emotional understanding. And Mikey, just being who he is already predisposed to that. So those two pre-existing influences, plus just Mikey being himself, turned Mikey into basically a god, which is amazing. Mikey is the strongest of all four of them, and it's wild. The boy can throw a building and open portals in time and fucking dimension. Mikey is wild. Also, he gets hair. Why does he get hair? Nobody else gets hair for long. And finally, Leo is a red-eared slider, which is incredibly lore important because he's banned in New Jersey. But in all seriousness, I'm fairly sure that Baron Draxum intended for Leo to be the all-rounder or the actual strategist and leader of the team, where Mikey would be the mystical powerhouse, Raph would be the tank, and Donnie would be the brains. I think he intended Leo to be the operator, basically the one who made the in-times battle strategies and had a little bit of everything of the previous specialists to round out the team. And this is largely what happened in real life because of the predisposition that Baron Draxum imposed upon them. Now, to get back to the actual plot, Baron Draxum kidnaps Lujitsu with the intent to use him as the source of genetics for the turtles, for his super soldiers. And at first, because Yoshi is currently in his protest of nonviolence, he doesn't resist at all. He's captured by Draxum's subordinates and taken to his lab, and is even told what he's going to be used for. And he doesn't care until he sees the turtles. And he realizes that these cute, innocent little babbies, look at them, they're so cute, oh my god, are going to be turned into basically soldiers, killers. And Yoshi, having been fighting for years against his own will, probably killing in the Battle Nexus based on what the Battle Nexus is. He didn't want that for the turtles. He immediately took a liking to them. So he decided he's going to fight again, and he's not going to let these turtles be used for this cheap asshole's machinations. You know, they never dated, yet somehow they're already divorced. So, in the speed-run marital custody dispute, Baron Draxum and Lujitsu fight over the turtles while the turtles are currently being mutated. During the fight, the turtles get ejected from the machine, and the machine breaks, going into an explosion. So, in the chaos, Lujitsu scoops up the already mutated turtles and is bitten by a rat, touched some ooze, and escapes, starting his slow mutation process into Splinter. Now, this Splinter, as you can tell from his backstory alone, is going to be really different from the borderline racial stereotype of the priors. Honestly, I really like this Splinter, and the other ones were always kind of hard for me to watch, so I don't really know what the problem is. Regardless, he escapes, and he has no direction. He has no idea what he's going to do. So he hides in the New York sewers, unwilling to be in the hidden city, but Big Mama and Draxum are after him, and unable to be in human society as he has become rat. He lives in between both worlds, as he has been forced to encompass in both body and space, basically. It is very well written. I mean, come on. Watch the damn show. And he just raises his kids. His mutant super soldier kids specifically designed for war, and one of them probably already has the IQ of a 10-year-old, so he's not doing great. He's depressed, he's losing his self-image, his glory is behind him, and nothing in front of him that he can see except his sons. 14 years pass, and we can cut to the turtles themselves. They're just teenagers. Splinter has put minimal passing effort into teaching them about the Hamato clan's ways. He treats them far more like sons than he does pupils, and he spends most of his days in front of the TV. Boy is depressed, he needs therapy, but he can't even leave the sewer, so what are you gonna do? You're gonna watch Scorpion Treadmill and eat cake. And that's what he does. So the turtles have been, like, half neglected.
When was the last time we did something together?
Let's see. 278 days ago, you said hi, Purple, to Raph.
But also minorly taught about their heritage. They live in a loving family, if not a dysfunctional one, and just kind of exist. Now, we were supposed to get the origin of April and the turtles meeting and becoming friends, as they already are friends in the first episode. But, you know, hey Nickelodeon, I just want to talk. So I've written my own meetup story, but I will talk about that in the other Bale video. Regardless, cutting to the first episode, we have all 4 turtles who are considering themselves to be different ages, even though from everything I just said, they are obviously quadruplets. I mean, what are you talking about? You were mutated in the exact same time. You weren't sentient before that. And you would have no idea, neither would Splinter, about what age you are. The only person who would be able to know when you hatched, and if you hatched at different times, even if that is relevant, which I argue it isn't, your mutation day should be your birthday, Baron Draxum, you don't know exists, so how do you know that Raph's the oldest? Is it just because he's the biggest? I think that Splinter decided their ages by size, not by age. And that is absolutely something this man would do. The Rise Turtles are quadruplets. I will not take criticism. I don't know how these two can be twins inside of them being quadruplets, but that is still also true. These two things exist at the same time. I will not take criticism. Moving on. They've got inherent abilities, minor training, their ancestral weapons given to them by Splinter but not taught how to use them, and they grew up just on Blue-Jitsu movies. They grew up absorbing the city around them and are just teenagers. And they have no desire to be heroes yet. They have no understanding of the stakes, what the Hamato clan actually means. Leo doesn't even know how to pronounce it yet. They're just kids. They're just existing. Until, on Cannonball Day, they come across, accidentally, a really weird-looking cat. This is Mayhem, and Mayhem is weird. I love him. He is precious. He is my baby. He plays fetch. But he is also a secret agent, and I don't know how sentient he is. He's obviously sentient, but you know what I mean. Is he a cat, a dog, or does he have human-level intelligence and is just using April for free rent? The world may never know. But Raph spots him looking scared, and because Raph is the biggest of spiky marshmallows and my husband, and I will fight you for him, decides he needs to help this lost cat, or dog. And we discover that there is this collar around Mayhem's neck. It is cute. It has this thing that these 2 Russian-looking men are trying to get from it. So, the obvious, natural thing to do is to fight them. Turns out they're yokai. And turns out the thing around Mayhem's neck is Empyrean. Empyrean is, again, as you may have heard from before, sourced from the crang corpse of the remaining crang that isn't in the prison dimension. Probably the source of all yokai kind and magic, and also the base of the mutagen that Draxum created, which, you'll note, means that every mutant moving forward, including the turtles, has Empyrean in their blood. The turtles get into their first real fight and suck at it. They have no training. The weapons are basically aesthetic, except for Donnie's. Because true to his character in a way that has more depth than you could imagine on first viewing, he seems to be the only one who put actual consistent effort into learning the technique of his weapon, going so far as to build his own, and compensating for his species being slightly less hardy than the other threes. He has his own battle shell, he's relying on his tech, and he clearly, based on this fight and the fight with Draxum later, knows how to use a bow, which is an incredibly technical and precision-focused weapon. He's putting in effort while his brothers are just kind of existing, which is fair. I'm not bashing the boys. They don't need to yet. But Donnie has a superiority and an inferiority complex at the same time forever. Inside you are two wolves. You are a turtle. Donnie is such an interesting and complex character in this version of TMNT that isn't exactly obvious at first, but quickly becomes obvious, even in the first viewing, that he has changed a lot and not at all from his previous generations. He's gone from, in 2012, being...
She's so beautiful. On this monitor, she can't tell I'm staring.
You do know that's not muted, right?
That... to GOAT of all time, Autistic King, we simp. I want him so bad. Now, I'll get into the characterization of the turtles and April and Splinter more later, even Draxum. But for now, the two goons that are fighting over what they think is the cat themselves, but is simply the Empyrean, ends up with April being accidentally transported with Mayhem into the Hidden City. The turtles follow as best they can, the foreshadowing of the show already hinting that Splinter knows about the Hidden City, which the turtles do not and have never experienced before, because Hamato Yoshi does not tell them anything. He's kind of a bad dad until about halfway through season 1, but he's trying his best, and you can see why. Man is struggling to stay alive right now. So they make their way to the Hidden City. Donnie says the right thing and then April says the wrong thing, and everybody believes April, and I'm not salty. It just doesn't make any sense for it to be under the city. This is my bugbear, don't worry about it. And they make their way to Baron Draxum's lab, which they fell in front of. They find Mayhem in a cage, a random human also in a cage, and Draxum. He is about to, after 10 years of rebuilding his research after the first lab exploded, assuming that Lujitsu and the first creations have died in that fire, he's ready to start again. He just got his Empyrean back, his lab is rebuilt, he is ready to make his ooze. He's not making soldiers this time, he is going full force right away into the transformation plan. He's got this first human as an experiment. Let's do this. Now, all of the weapons that the turtles started with, except the tech bow because it was superior,
You next time make your weapons out of high-grade titanium.
have been broken in the initial fight. So April sneaks them off to an armory inside of Draxum's lab. Remember, he is a warring warrior scientist. And they discover mystic weapons. And it's never mentioned, but these were obviously always meant for them. Not to be stolen and used as heroism, but Draxum definitely made those for his super soldiers, and has just been keeping them this whole time. They're for them. It wasn't just a coincidence that the correct weapons and these perfectly suited for their abilities were just sitting there. This show is so good, guys. So, they find their new shiny weapons, and Donnie, unwilling to part with his tech bow, snags a mystic-looking crystal instead. They go back to the main area where they are just in time to see Baron Draxum injecting the human that he has captured with a mosquito-like insect carrying the Ooze, and in the vat behind him is a enormous swarm of these mosquitoes, and they watch in fascination, amusement, horror. I don't know, these turtles are kind of amoral. As this random delivery boy is transformed into a fish. Turns out that those crab cakes weren't real, and they decide this is unacceptable. They need to save the cat, and they need to stop Baron Draxum from creating more crab men. And they fight. Baron Draxum takes one look at them and knows exactly what they are, who they are, and where they came from. They didn't die. They didn't die in the fire. His plan can go back to its original. He's excited. And in the fight that ensues, he sees that they are untrained buffoons, but it worked. It worked exactly as planned. They have no training, and they're still good. So, he attempts to get them back on his side, and they kindly tell him to fuck the hell off. They free Mayhem and the fish guy, and in the process, once again destroy Draxum's lab, inadvertently freeing all of those mosquitoes which pop out of the portal they came into and fly across New York City. Baron Draxum's plan has started, rocky or not. The turtles escape, and, well, frankly, they don't think this is their problem, and they go home. As you can see, it's kind of only Raph that has a real moral compass of these brothers, and I find this incredibly compelling. How they influence each other and how they interact with both humanity and other people it's not flat, is what I'm saying. Even if it might seem gaggy or slow in the first few episodes while the show is gaining its footing, these characters are consistent and full. They have volume, they have intricacies. It's great. None of them are Flanders. They're wonderful. Regardless, the first half of season 1 is mostly episodic as we establish the universe. They do eventually decide that they want to be heroes, not just because the mosquitoes are kind of their fault, not just because they want to do good, except that is Raph's motivation. Mostly they want to have fun and they think it would be cool and they admire Lujitsu. So, they go off and do that. Their first enemy they meet is the Foot Clan. But they don't know the significance of the Foot Clan, what the Foot Clan is doing. Splinter has told them nothing, like I said. Splinter at this point probably still doesn't believe the Foot Clan's real. In the next episode, we discover the extent of Donnie's Deus Ex Machina tech abilities. Well, not the extent, but the first hint of this Donnie is not the 2012 ramshackle, can do great things but limited in his resources kind of guy. He's got unexplained infinite resource to titanium, to cerebral reprogramming, to basically anything sci-fi that you can think of. Donnie is going to be able to make. The only thing we know he can't do is make a nuke. Yet. Additionally, we come across our first mutant. This is Meat Sweats. I hate him. He's a great villain. He's Gordon Ramsay, cannibal. He is actually great as a villain. I want bacon for dinner. I hate this man. I can't explain to you why, but I hate him. I hate him so much. Keep Mikey the fuck away from this man. He's bad news. But this is where we fully discover that mosquitoes are doing their job, flying throughout the city and mutating random people into random things. And we see now that mutations grant some amount of excessive ability, but is also randomized. It's not as designed as the turtles because it's just happening on instinct. Whatever the last thing they interacted with is what they get fused with, and what traits are given and what traits aren't are simply a product of chance. So the turtles defeat Gordon Ramsay, Donnie gives Leo a collar, and the day is fine. And as the show goes on, we meet more and more of our new rogues gallery, almost all of which are unique to Rise specifically, and actually all of which are brilliantly portrayed, designed, characterized. They're all unique. I don't know who this guy is, but this guy is kind of hot. The purple dragons are here. Honestly, those jackets are pretty sick, I gotta say. We see Donnie and Mikey acquire the base too, and Donnie create their eponymous turtle tank. We get characterization of all of the characters. We see their relationships and their conflicts and their unconditional love for each other. We see them getting slowly better. We see them unlocking this nimpo that they think is coming from the weapons, but I'm almost certain the weapons are just conduits to their nimpo, and they slowly get better at these abilities. I kind of glossed over the mystic aspect of their weapons and how they unlock them in the first episode. I apologize, I'm kind of going off the cuff here, but to trail back for a second, Leo has an Odachi now, and this Odachi allows him to create portals. He is very bad at this at first, but as he will go through the show, he will get incredibly proficient with it. He is the one who struggles the most with it. Well, no, Donnie is the one who struggles the most with nimpo, but more in the way that he outright refuses to even attempt to unlock his until later in the series. But Leo wants this. He wants his powers to work, and he struggles with it. I think this is a pretty interesting correlation to his character of his hubris, his inferiority complex, his reliance of his self-image on being both the best and also solely tied to his connection to his brothers, his need to impress them both for pride and actual acceptance. Leo is very well done. He is nothing like any Leo prior, and I love it. Look, every other Leo is a fucking narc. This Leo?
Don't you rat us out to the rat. Snitches get stitches.
He's like a bad person. He's sweet. He loves his family. He is a good character. I love him. I would die for this turtle. But he is a bad person. And that's not age. I don't think that's going away. And I don't want it to. Moving on, Raphael has an easier time developing his powers, though he does have roadblocks with it, and is able to use his new tonfas instead of sais to create projections of a larger version of himself. Later, he'll develop this power to be able to make duplicates. He'll be able to make kaiju suits, individual fisticuffs. It's a very versatile power focused almost entirely on defense of both himself and others, but packs an enormous hit. As you'll see, these powers correlate strongly to their personalities and their aptitude to it as well, because I don't think these weapons are what's giving them their power. It is just allowing them to funnel their nimpo before they fully unlock it. Mikey's power, at this point, is an extendable chain in his Kusore Fundo, and a ability to create fire with it. His power will be the one that changes the most in the show, and also is the far and away most powerful. It is not a specific type of magic, which I think is correlative with both his creativity as a person and his compounded upon again magic ability. He is able to manifest chains, he is able to manifest strength, he is able to create portals, he's probably able to heal a bit here. He's a mystic master. I'm pretty sure he's a god. I don't know if this man can die unless he chooses to. And Donnie, up until much later, has no mystic ability whatsoever. He relies solely on his tech, which improves and becomes more reliable as the show progresses. In the first episode, it's already impressive, and it's always going to be impressive, but it becomes less glitchy, it gets more versatile, and then eventually, when he does unlock his nimpo, because he understands and accepts that magic isn't an antithesis to science, it's not replacing him or his worth, and that his worth isn't tied to his usefulness in the first place, that he is able to merge the two. And eventually, he develops the most interesting of all of the nimpo powers. Mikey's is still probably more powerful, but it is a close second. He is a late bloomer, but a heavy fucking hitter. He can create and manifest, like Green Lantern, anything he knows how to make. His science is now no longer tethered to materials or resources or time to build it. If he could build it, he already has and can summon it at will. He can make an arsenal, he can make anything at all. It's amazing. He no longer needs uranium, though you should probably give him some anyway. You can trust him with it, don't worry. And eventually, April will be given a weapon that allows for a conduit of her nimpo, though she will think it's sourced from somewhere else, that allows her to hit heavy. We would have seen her nimpo develop into something more unique to her if the show had gotten to continue Nickelodeon. Hey, you wanna talk? But at the moment, it's kind of ambiguous what she can specifically do with her Hamato nimpo, though I've got headcanons, of course. I can explain that more in my following video about the Bale, as well as Casey Jones Jr.'s abilities moving forward, as well as a different Casey Jones, the real one. As you'll see, Casey Jones has an interesting existence in the Rise universe, there being two of them, and one of them not being introduced as Casey right away, as it being like kind of a build-up that we didn't really get to see the full hit of because the show was canceled right after the reveal, which was really disappointing. The fandom kind of as a result of this, not because we like Casey less, but because, or I call her Cass, not because we like Cass less than Casey Jr., but because we never really got to explore her character as someone who isn't an enemy, and as a result, the Rise fandom kind of sees Junior as our Casey, because he looks more obviously Casey Jones, and our Cass was never gotten to be really enjoyed as Casey. We got about 5 minutes of her being Cassandra Jones, and I would love to experience her personality as an ally more. Nickelodeon, I just want to... So, throughout most of the first half of the series, we just develop on these principles, these ideas that have been seeded. The Foot Clan are in the background doing something insidious that the Turtles are trying to thwart, but only because they're heroes, only because they're part of the Rogues Gallery. They don't actually know what the Foot Clan is doing, but we're watching them acquire piece by piece the dark armor, because there isn't a Hamato right now that knows they need to be stopped. And we see the Turtles experiencing more yokai culture. We see them filling out their roster of Rogues Gallery. We see them practicing and developing their skills both as ninja and with their nimpo. We see Splinter as he is now, where he is loving and he cares, but he is not present. And we see that slowly change as he begins to realize that his sons are like doing things while he's not looking. And eventually he discovers that the Foot Clan are not only real, here, everything he's heard is real, and that the dark armor is almost complete, oh no, that he realizes and starts to grow as a person, that he needs to take responsibility for both his inaction, his action, and just his family legacy. And he starts to cope with that, and he starts to be more active, and he stumbles and he gets better, and he is a great dad. I really like Papa, okay? He's so good. I want him to tell me he's proud of me. He's so good. I don't know why people think that this is the worst Splinter. He is obviously the best Splinter. Once we get the episode showing that the armor has really started to form, we've established all of our characters. Baron Draxum is still trying to mutate all of humanity. Things start to go in a more plot-focused direction. We've established the world, now it's time to get down to the brass tacks. In the Season 1 mid-finale is when we, with the Turtles, discover that They are the children of their idol, Lujitsu, but they don't yet discover that Splinter is Lujitsu. Baron Draxum gathers all of the mutants he's created so far to try and take out the turtles because he's decided they are more a liability than an asset. And eventually this culminates in Baron Draxum meeting the Foot Clan and them joining forces. The Foot Clan promising him the dark armor to use as he pleases. There's obviously insidious intent here, but Baron Draxum is a bit of a numpty, so he doesn't notice. And this is where things steadily pick up. It doesn't go immediately gung-ho into the plot, it slowly leans us in as the turtles now know what they're trying to stop the Foot Clan from. Splinter now knows that this is getting real and he needs to actually put effort into training his sons, and generally things get steadily higher stakes. Eventually this culminates in the boys still being teenagers, still not fully comprehending the amount of risk involved here of the dark armor being fully formed, missing a crucial reconnaissance mission, which April does not miss because she's responsible and the Ninja Supreme.
Wait, did he just call me a pizza?
This results in Splinter being incredibly disappointed in the boys. They miss this incredibly important mission, and he discovers that the dark armor is all but complete. There is only one piece missing, and they are transferring it to their final location.
Final location? Grand ceremony?
Psycho Mantis.
And the boys, incredibly guilty about disappointing their dad like this, decide, okay, we're taking this seriously. Too seriously. And they completely give up who they are to become Hamato. And for a brief moment, Splinter falls into the exact trap that drove him away from his family in the first place. He becomes, for a quick moment, overly invested in removing what his sons are to make them the perfect ninjas dedicated to their clan, willing to sacrifice everything, unwilling to have fun or relax, simply all serious, not family but clan, for this cause. And if they had gotten more time in the show, I would have liked to see this happen for like an episode or 2 episodes, rather than the half of an episode we get to explore this parallel to Splinter kind of becoming what drove him away from his grandfather in the first place, what took his mother from him in the first place. The Hamato clan becoming so serious and forgetting that their actual physical, literal strength comes from each individual Hamato's uniqueness, their specialness, their love for one another, and their trust in one another being the source of their power. So instead, becoming these cold, samey carbon copies of the perfect soldier. The same thing that drove him to leave, the same thing that drove him to depression, the same thing that took his mom is what he's imposing upon his sons. And they take it. They don't like any of it, but they disappointed their dad being them. So they want to make it up to him. And none of them realize that this is the wrong way to go about that. Regardless, it does supercharge their technical ability. Now, time in the show is usually actually very well and subtly passing throughout time. I think up until the season finale, which is where we are right now, at least 2 years must have passed as each episode feels like there's a gap in between. It feels like life continues to happen at a steady pace as they grow at a steady pace, as things happen in not quick succession, just as it happens. This episode is actually one of the only instances of that not being the case, which is why I really would have liked an episode or 2 to lean on this, because they get better, they lose their personalities, and they become the Hamato clan in what has to be like 4 hours based on the subplot that's happening on the other side of this episode. So I would have liked to see that make more sense, but that is kind of the only time that I see this problem in the show, and I think it is a product of them hand-waving it because they had less episodes to work with than they wanted. Regardless, they speed run montage their training and technical ability and go after the dark armor. April had stayed back when Splinter went to grab his sons to watch the dark armor and follow it to its final location. This ends up with them on Big Mama's mystic train as she runs all of the underground foundation of the yokai society. It is a camouflaged magic train that allows for discreet transportation. The Foot Clan and Baron Draxum using it to discreetly transport their dark armor. Baron Draxum pays Big Mama for the use of this train in this odd, glowy orb that will be important later. April, disguised as a Foot Clan soldier, sneaks onto the train to see where it goes, and is basically left alone in the lion's den. She is capable, but she is not able to take on an entire train of Foot Clan soldiers by herself. None of them would have been. She doesn't even have her mystic weapon yet. So she hits her panic button, and the now Hamato-ified turtles chase after both the dark armor and April. They make it onto the train, and as these overly serious, desperate to not be themselves turtles, no mystic abilities, Donnie not using his tech, fight their way to the head of the car and the head of the train where the dark armor resides. There's a brief moment of elation as seems like it worked. The Hamato clan way got them to the train, it got them April, it got them the dark armor. And then Baron Draxum appears. And to this point, Baron Draxum has been a 50-50 split of intimidating and powerful and humorous. In the first season, he's voiced by John Cena for some reason, and he is a incredibly entertaining combination of a flamboyant Disney villain and a stooge and an incredibly capable fighter. He is a threat, but he has never felt like more of a threat than in this scene. He takes them entirely by surprise. All of their training, all of their effort is completely moot to him with a mission. He is no longer playing, he's no longer casual with them, and he takes them out in an instant, and he steals April in an instant, and they are powerless, and you can feel the fear that this situation causes them. All of them are captured, and April is tied up through a portal to where Splinter is waiting nervously for his son's return. She gives him a message from Draxum that Hamato Yoshi has the final piece of the dark armor, and that it was trade the dark armor piece, the final piece that will destroy the world and bring back the Shredder, in exchange for his son's return. And this is where it is more obvious than ever that Splinter does love his sons. He has been referring in the last few episodes to the Hamato way. He tries to be what he couldn't be as a kid. He tries to be his grandfather for a while. In this situation, to the Hamato scrolls, which allow him access to the spirits of his ancestors. And they tell him he needs to become a hermit. He needs to let his sons die and spend the rest of his life hiding that final piece of the armor. And that's when he realizes that this was a mistake. That this was the stupidest way to go about this, and that his sons are far more important than any duty to his clan. Which, in my understanding of this scene, is exactly what the spirits were trying to make him realize. I don't think the Hamato clan works like this. I don't think they became emotionless, duty-bound machines in the time between Hamato Karai and Hamato Yoshi. I think that they are just as silly and genuine and real as every other Hamato that we've ever met. And this was them not testing Yoshi, but kind of trolling him in the way to try and teach him, because the normal methods didn't work when he was a kid. And he was trying to do what he thought the Hamato clan was. And they, by showing him the full extent of that, the logical conclusion, then taught him the actual lesson of no, absolutely not. Family first. So, he and April storm the hideout where the Dark Armor resides, where Baron Draxum has his sons, and where the Foot Clan is ready to revive the Shredder. And they almost make it. There is an intense battle between Lujitsu and Baron Draxum, never married but twice divorced. And it's epic. They're close and he's winning. But then Baron Draxum leverages the safety of his sons and he caves. Because he has been through a lot. He has lost a lot and he is not willing to lose his sons. He gives Draxum the armor. And if we flash back a little bit, while Splinter and April are trying to save the turtles are hanging in a suspended cage, considering why following their dad's teachings didn't work. And they realize that, yeah, no, this Hamato jazz is not for us. Around the same time that Splinter realizes this. And they decide we be fucking we, and they break out in their way. They get their personalities and their charms and their eccentricities back, and they move forward as themselves. Splinter does not know that they escaped on their own, and just as they reunite, Draxum puts the final piece of the Dark Armor onto the rest of it. And it's too late. The Dark Armor immediately activates, but it doesn't become the Shredder immediately. It latches itself to Draxum, and in a seemingly painful sequence, he merges with it, but he loves it. The power that he is granted is like nothing he's ever felt, and he is supercharged. He immediately, where he was struggling against Splinter not moments ago, flattens all of them all at once. Splinter is injured, and he basically doesn't think they're worth his time and immediately ascends to the surface. The Foot Clan is confused. They weren't expecting him to keep his mind. They weren't expecting him, once he was merged with the Dark Armor, to still be Baron Draxum. They think something has gone wrong and they abscond through a portal in the chaos. So, the turtles apologize to their father for failing. Splinter reminds them that they didn't fail him, he failed them, and that he has been distant before, and then he didn't value what made them special after. He tried to make them something they weren't, and that what they were is what would save them. They're the ones who make him proud, and he loves them, and he gives them back their masks and their weapons, and I'm not crying, you're crying, and they ascend with Donnie's tech up to the surface to face Draxum Shredder in a incredibly amusing, intense, really well animated final fight of the season 1 finale. It is a perfect encapsulation of Rise of the TMNT. The actual series finale is cooler, it's more emotional, but this one is the perfect balance of cartoony fun, actual stakes, actual emotions, and brilliant sakuga. I like the fight with Baron Shredder better than the fight with Shredder in the next season. But neither here nor there. They win with the help of Jupiter Jim, but this is not the end. Draxum is ejected from the Dark Armor, and he realizes it had been sapping his life force. And the way that the turtles defeated the armor just then was actually somewhat of an assistance to the armor itself. They got rid of the foreign contaminant that was keeping it from doing what it needed to do, what it was programmed to do. And without that, it was free to suck up Baron Draxum's life force and use it to truly create itself. Unfortunately, it's still not... Well, fortunately, you know what I mean. It's still not Shredder. It is what the show will call the Shredder Beast. It is a mindless, fully powerful, autonomous body of armor without the spirit of a Rokusaki inside of it. It's not sentient, it is a mindless beast bent on carnage. Orokusaki's spirit is still trapped with Karai in that mini prison dimension. And because of this, the armor is split between two planes of existence. It is phasing in and out of reality, and it is just going on a rampage. And the next few episodes are of the turtles desperately trying to defeat this mindless monstrosity that keeps popping in and out of existence every 15 minutes in different locations all across the city. Them defeating the Shredder Beast is an amazing episode about Leo and his character and how he works, what his strengths are and what his insecurities are, and how that all correlates to his brother's perceptions of him. And it is definitely an episode about Leo, or at least highlighting Leo. Though I will note that Donnie also has a subtle but incredibly important character beat in this episode that is important to both his development and who he is as a person and how he sees himself. In the fight against Shredder, none of them are doing any damage. It's not entirely clear if this thing even feels pain. It definitely is ticklish, but that's not really useful. So they're throwing everything they have at it, and Donnie throws everything he has at it. His entire arsenal, all of his tech. He doesn't have Nimpo yet. It is a finite source of all of his accomplishments up until this point. And he is cocky, he is proud, he is sure that this will do something, and all of it attacks the Shredder. It hits full force, and it does nothing. And the show doesn't linger on it very long, as the Shredder immediately wrecks his shit afterwards, but that blow to Donnie specifically would have probably been devastating. And his insecurities of mystic weaponry and magic in general versus his tech only gets worse in the season following this, and is a product of him feeling useless and now replaced, because he doesn't really actually feel in his heart that he's worth anything unless he's worth something, unless he's doing something useful. And he is useful. He is the most integral turtle on the team, in the family. They can't exist without him, and they probably wouldn't have survived long enough to even get their magic weapons in the first place if not for Donnie tricking out the lair with every amenity they have. He's their scaffolding of their entire lives. But because of that, and because of his soft shell, and because he's just generally insecure, he thinks that that's the reason why he's important. He thinks that's the reason they keep him around, and he kind of imposes that, as we see all the way back in the second episode, subconsciously onto the others as well, that quirks and flaws are to be compensated for or eliminated if possible to make the turtles better. Their usefulness is what matters. He unlearns this for them incredibly quickly. He only falls prey to the concept twice. But for him, it's a little more deep-rooted. And as he sees magic being something they're good at and he's not, and magic being effective where his tech isn't, he starts to think he's going to not be needed anymore. And that's going to be a problem. Leo, in parallel, separates from the group during this fight. They have no idea how to fight this thing. Nothing is working. It's glitching in and out of existence, and they feel like they're going to die. So they need to find a way to imprison it, to do something. And Splinter offhandedly mentions that Big Mama might have some amount of mystic weaponry, be able to fight this thing. She's known for wrangling beasts like this for her Nexus. So Leo attaches himself to that concept, and despite all of his brothers and his father having no faith in him, and is like, what? Stay. No, you can't just leave to ask Big Mama something. She hates you. She's going to kill you. What are you talking about? You're an idiot. And he's like, no, I got this. And he portals away with his dad, despite everyone's protest. And throughout the episode, it splits between the rest of the family, April, Raph, Mikey, and Donnie, holding the Shredder at bay fruitlessly, while Leo attempts to get something to destroy the Shredder, or contain it, or anything, with his dad. This is the first time that Splinter has seen Big Mama since he escaped or was recaptured by Draxum. Throughout the entire thing, Leo is talking up a big game. He's being his faceman persona, and he is trying to convince Big Mama to give him something. But Big Mama is manipulative and is not a woman who anyone thinks can be outplayed. But Leo, throughout the entire thing, has this air of confidence, and I've got this, and everyone else is, no, you don't, you idiot, you're making it worse with every word you're saying. No one trusts his process. And as the audience, it's portrayed like we shouldn't either. It kind of looks like he's being an idiot. It kind of looks like he's just full of hubris and cockiness and nothing else, and doesn't realize that he's making the situation worse with every word. And as it culminates, it ends up with Splinter, much older, no weapons, thrust into the battle Nexus again to fight as a showpiece. And if he wins against these impossible odds that Leo set up for him, Big Mama will give them a mystic collar that can contain the Shredder. Splinter thinks, and is very vocal about the fact that his son has just doomed him and he should have brought purple. Every time we cut back to the rest of the family, Raph or Donnie or Mikey are saying, where the hell is he? Did he flake? Why is he not coming back? We can't handle this. And it eventually is revealed that Leo had a plan that he was making up on the fly that was brilliant the entire time and completely worked. No one trusted him or his methods for half good reason, half not. He kind of has the air of being someone unreliable, but it's about as surface level as his faceman persona, which is deceptively as deep and as shallow as you want it to be. But he's a tactician at heart, and people don't trust that. He's kind of a dumbass genius kind of thing. He might not know book words, but he can beat you at chess. And eventually he confronts his dad in the middle of the fight. Why do none of you trust me? And then immediately proves himself, bringing the collar back over to Raph, his brothers, and is like, okay, we can get this collar on him. I did not let you down. And he implores Raph to just trust him. And Raph does. And they get the collar on the Shredder, and Big Mama shows up with the key to that collar and promises, because Leo has impressed him, that she will honor her side of the deal and dispose of the Shredder in some sort of containment. And somewhat stupidly, all of them take this at face value. They should not have taken this at face value. Big Mama always honors her deals, but she changes the rules at the last second. So she may have given Leo the collar, she may have taken the Shredder into custody, but not to be contained. She will be using the Shredder as her new champion in the Battle Nexus. That collar doesn't just depower the Shredder, it doesn't depower him at all. It is connected to a ring that Big Mama is wearing that gives her complete and utter control over the beast. This will not be known to the family or relevant to the plot for the majority of Season 2, as it builds up in the background for something much larger. That is all of Season 1, and going into Season 2, brothers think that they've defeated the Shredder, everything's cool, back to status quo. And we briefly go back into an episodic format, allowing the tension to de-escalate, allowing them to relax for a moment. We get two of the best episodes in the show, Clothes Don't Make the Turtle, and then my personal favorite episode, The Layer Games. Thank you, animators. We focus for a while the plot is building in the background, unbeknownst to the Hamatos. We get episodes focused entirely on the characters, on developing who they are. We get Donnie confronting with April all of these insecurities that have been building, and him being reassured that it's who he is and his tech is valuable separate to him, that they love and need and appreciate both him and his tech respective of each other. They don't think his tech is worthless. They think it's brilliant and they're proud of him, and it's completely unrelated to how much they love him. These two things are separate. They're married, Your Honor. We get more dives into Raph and his struggling with leadership, his somewhat naive and kind of bullheaded approach to leadership. And throughout the entire series, we've been getting these hints that he's not exactly suited for the job, and he might kind of really not want it in the first place. Just like him being the oldest, kind of just because he's the biggest, he's the leader by default. Leo has no interest in it, and it's one of the biggest changes that we get from Rise as opposed to the TMNTs.
You know, at first I felt you were put in charge just for change, which actually hurt my feelings, but here you have a real knack for crime.
Guess we know what we gotta do now, huh, boss?
And there's no leadership conflict at all until after the show is ended and it's in the movie. It's clear that Raph isn't suited for the role, and it's stressing him out. He's not good at plans. He just kind of bullheads into things. He's the one with the heart of gold, but a heart of gold does not a leader make. And Leo has no interest. He's not even thinking about it. No one is. No one would think Leo should be the leader, because while he might be a brilliant tactician, he is also a flirt, a completely unserious person. He has no responsibility. He's a flake. He's a bad person. No one, including Leo, thinks he should be the leader. No one else wants the job, so it's up to Raph. And this conflict is never directly addressed in his character, but it makes the surprise change that Splinter imposes at the end of the series less jarring in retrospect. Because of situations like the Shredder Beast, because of Raph's obvious stress with the role and overbearingness and just not fitness for this. He's a natural Lancer. He's the protector, you know? These are things that Splinter has, since paying attention to his family, noticed in the dynamic, and he realized Leo's potential before anyone else did, including Leo's, that his way of thinking is what is needed for coordinating a team. So it makes the end twist back to the status quo of the franchise less jarring and just to get to the status quo, and more a underpinning that they didn't get to explore as much as they would like to just because of time. And throughout all of these relatively episodic character building episodes, we get these background hints of something bigger happening. We hear whispers of a new Battle Nexus champion. We see at the end of random Villain of the Week episodes, villains getting kidnapped by this vague shadow. And eventually this culminates in the 4-part series finale, which is a masterpiece for the situation that they were given. They had their season cut in half. They were promised 7 seasons, given 2, and then the second one was cut in half. Nickelodeon, I just want to talk. But with what they had, with the shafting they were given, they made magic, my dude. It was great. It starts with what looks to be a random fluff episode of the turtles exploring New York on a scavenger hunt, only to be derailed when Big Mama uses that orb that she was given by Draxum to kidnap the entire city. That orb is a micro prison. It is a pocket dimension that she can suck up as many people as she wants to trap them in a prison of virtual paradise. So they're subdued, they don't know that they're being captured, and everyone in the entire city is captured except the 4 turtles, including Splinter and April. And also Foot Recruit, who is Cassandra Jones, who I haven't really mentioned much because there's a lot about this show that has a lot happening and it's all brilliant. Cass is brilliant. She's got great episodes, but I can't talk about everything, and you need to watch the show, and if you don't watch the show, I will end you. Draxum gets a redemption that I didn't even get to mention, that for what it is and for the limited time they had, is executed relatively well, and the end result is very good, but I do wish they had more time to develop it. I don't blame the writers for that. Nickelodeon, I just want to... So the turtles are left in this barren city. only to be presented with these enormous screens of Big Mama presenting to her audience the special that she has been advertising for weeks. Battle Nexus, New York. She has taken the entire city hostage, and the turtles will be her spectacle in facing all of her enemies separated from each other in these bespoke challenges for the fate of their people. We get to see some really interesting fights where the turtles are paired up with their rogues gallery, and specifically the villains that are more tied to each turtle, because each turtle gets basically their own villain. Donnie's is more the purple dragons than Hypnopotamus, which is who he's paired with, but Leo actually has more of a connection to Hypnopotamus, and the crab guys are just kind of there. They're the most underwhelming of the rogues gallery for sure. They didn't get a lot of time. They're not really interesting. I love this fight in the Battle Nexus with Leo in one of them, but definitely not the best. They're paired with these villains and forced to face one of Big Mama's Battle Nexus champions in a tag team with the villains under threat of death. They have to learn to work together with their enemies, and each challenge is bespoke to the turtle and the villain. I think this premise could have gone on for a couple episodes, but we only got the one, and it's well executed for what it is. Leo's is the best, it's very fun, but I think that the hand and brain that Hypnopotamus and Donnie were forced to play, which is a game of chess where Donnie became the pieces and thus only a voice, and Hypnopotamus is the one who would be moving the pieces. That could have been a pretty fun premise to actually see happen, but we really only see it set up, and Leo gets more screen time with his task than Donnie gets. Regardless, we see Mikey, Leo, and Donnie all win their challenges with their respective villain, but Raph loses, and based on Big Mama's announcement, perishes. This is obviously fake. So the three turtles and their three villains are sent back to their original spot where they were first captured and are presented with Big Mama, who says, "Well, you win. But I'm changing the terms at the last second. I kind of like New York, so this is going to be my new Battle Nexus now. Bye." And they're like, no. They know, based on just a single line that Raph said before dying, that Raph is doing something from a wrestling move that he is obsessed with, because all of the turtles have their own hobbies and interests and passions that are very well fleshed out and seeded throughout the show, one of which being Raph really liking wrestling. And there's a move called the Hibernator that he uses here, where he fakes a knockout only to come back at the best second, which he does. And they fight Big Mama, only for Big Mama to bring out her Battle Nexus champion, which, as we recall, is the Shredder Beast. During this entire time, a reformed Baron Draxum, Splinter, and April have all been trapped inside of this orb that Big Mama is holding that has the entirety of New York in it. They realize the magic that they're under, and that they're under a spell and in a trap, and with the help of Baron Draxum, they and Cassandra all escape the orb, with the rest of New York still stayed inside. So now, with the entire clan present, Big Mama and the Shredder Beast versus the Hamato clan, Baron Draxum tries to get the orb to free their people, and the Sakuga in this fight is, oh my god, the animation is fucking orgasmic. It's gorgeous. It is so good. Nickelodeon, give me the show back, or you will... we're going to talk. We're going to talk if you don't give me my show back. I want to talk. Nickelodeon. Regardless. Because I haven't talked about Cassandra Jones very much throughout this rant, I have forgotten to mention that on top of her not being revealed as Casey Jones, she is called something different the entire show. She's called Foot Recruit, because she's a Foot Clan member, and she's a villain throughout the entire series. So, during this fight against Big Mama, where they are tentative allies in trying to get all of New York back, which presumably includes the Foot Clan, she realizes that the enemy that Big Mama is using like a puppet is her shredder, her master. And she realizes what Big Mama is using to control it. So, just as the Hamato clan is winning, just as the brothers are kicking ass, she steals the ring, and the Foot Clan has the Shredder Beast back. Not only do they have it back, but now they have control over it. Things are incredibly worse all at once. But they defeat Big Mama, and they have the orb that contains all of New York City safely inside of it. Which turns out to be a blessing in disguise, because now the Shredder is here, and the Foot Clan is trying to make it sentient again. So in this final climactic battle, it's best if civilians aren't in the way. So there is a mad dash to figure out anything to defeat the Shredder, because as we recall, they have nothing to damage it. They only had that collar which could control it, and now the Foot Clan has it, so now it's a weapon. Splinter was taught how to defeat the Shredder. That is information the Hamato clan has. It's been taught for generations, but as we recall, Splinter rejected all of these teachings. He doesn't remember anything. He didn't pay attention. He ran away early. So they think they're at a dead end, but then Draxum offers to send the turtles into his memories, because if he was present for the information, then the recording, so to speak, should still be somewhere in his psyche. Through this episode and through this scene, we learn a lot about Yoshi and what happened. We learned that his mom was taken from him, why he rejected the clan, why this felt so wrong to him at first, and we discover that there is a weapon. There is a weapon in some sort of hidden dimension that can defeat the Shredder. So the turtles get out of his brain and relay the information. Draxum says he knows what they're talking about and can open that dimension because it is not the same prison dimension that the Crang are trapped in. Even though they're both called that, this one is apparently a lot smaller, a lot easier to access. Draxum gets it open, and the turtles see inside this prison dimension an enormous cage, an enormous skull, and right in the center is a sword. That must be the weapon they need, so they pull it out. This is a mistake, but also not a mistake. That sword is Karai, and as soon as they get it out of the prison dimension, it transforms into Karai, alive and at the same age she sealed herself and her father. But what this means is that Orokusaki's spirit is no longer trapped. He has now got the freedom to go into his body. The Shredder Beast is no longer the Shredder Beast, it's Shredder. They have inadvertently just revived him. But they have also revived Karai, who actually can defeat them. Or so they think. Karai tells them that yes, she does know how to defeat the Shredder. She needs maybe 5 minutes to relax because she was just tortured for 500 years and is suddenly out in the open. And also, why are her descendants 4 turtles and a rat? But she takes it mostly in stride because Gram is awesome, and she reveals to them as quickly as she can that she can train them to be ready to unlock the Hamato nimpo that they have only barely scratched the surface of, that they didn't even know that they were using, and that is the only thing that can affect or damage the Shredder. But before she's able to start training them, the Shredder locks on to her nimpo and is able to track where she is and immediately invades the lair. He destroys their home that they've lived in and that we've been seeing them live in. This home that they've had their entire lives is wrecked, destroyed in Shredder's attempt to kill Karai. Not just because she's the only one that can harm him, but because the Hamato nimpo, if he is able to consume it, will make him virtually invincible. And he does. He kills Karai. But he doesn't do it correctly, and he doesn't get the nimpo. And the turtles are forced to retreat. Their lair is in shambles. There is a character that I haven't mentioned, and not for lack of caring. See, very early in the first season, Donnie made a cleaning bot. just a bot that's meant to act as a butler, basically. And he named it Sheldon. At first, it was programmed only to favor him, and during some shenaniganery, Leo, hinting at his significantly higher intelligence than he lets on, reprograms Sheldon to have its own personality and its own will, but also to favor them over Donnie. Eventually, this equals out to Sheldon just being a person. The AI becomes a character, and this character exists in every episode for 2 seasons, and it's not Donnie's creation after it gains sentience. It's his son. Donnie is a teen dad, and they don't hide it. He is shown parenting Sheldon. Sheldon is seen growing up. They are bonding. He is Donnie's child, and the Shredder destroys him. Now, I might be coping, but I'm not coping. It's totally true, because it totally makes sense, and also it doesn't have to be this way, okay? It doesn't have to be this way. We see his head in the movie, so it's totally possible, and it's totally fine. He's fine. The body might have been destroyed, but he's a robot. He's got a backup hard drive. He's fine, guys. He's fine. My baby is fine. He's fine. Sheldon sacrifices himself to buy them time to try and save Karai. 2 Hamatos are lost that day. And as they are trying to retreat, Splinter and Draxum stay behind to give their sons time. Draxum, since his redemption, has slowly begun to consider the turtles not his creations and not his soldiers, but his sons. Like I said, Splinter and Draxum may never have been married, but they're definitely divorced and have joint custody now. And the turtles are left to watch their dad fight an impossible battle and presumably die, but he doesn't. But they don't know that. Right after seeing their grandma die, right after Donnie saw his son die, they don't know where April is. Everything is falling apart. Their home is destroyed, and they are no closer to defeating the Shredder. They escape into the woods to a place that they have used before as a sanctuary, to a mutant who was never a villain, but was just a nice guy and a side character. And they think about what they need to do. They don't know. They don't know what they need to do. They have lost everything, and Raph is breaking. All of that tension, all of that suit that doesn't quite fit as the leader, all of this stress, all of this, I don't know what to do, but I have to protect everyone because I'm the big brother. The brother who is the biggest is weighing on him more than it ever has before. He feels wholly responsible for coming up with a plan for saving everyone, and he doesn't have the slightest idea. We cut to April, who was not in the lair at the time, and her searching through the rubble for anyone. What she finds is Karai's body. She's barely alive, and she is about to die, but right before she does, she tells April that April needs to be the one to help the brothers unlock their nimpo. April says, how could she possibly do that? She's not a Hamato, she wouldn't have any. And this is when Karai reveals that she's always been a Hamato, and that blood is not what transfers ninpo. It's family, not blood. Those two things are different. And as she dies, she basically hitches a ride on April's body, fast-tracking the unlocking of April's already existent nimpo. So she's unlocked it. She has the knowledge and understanding and skills and magic of every Hamato that came before her. And she seeks out the brothers, who she can now sense because of Hamato Nimpo, the same way that the Shredder was able to find Karai. So she gets to them as fast as she can, and they try to unlock their Nimpo. Raph breaks down about all of this pressure. Donnie is finally ready to actually explore mystic options and magic because he knows that his tech isn't his worth. They realize that the thing they need to do is literally just put whole trust in each other. And Raph, being the impulsive, doesn't think things through, golden-hearted boy that he is, when he realizes that, does the most literal thing he can think of, and perform the highest stakes game of a trust fall that you could possibly imagine, and jumps off a cliff because he doesn't think things through, but he trusts his family. And so, without thinking even a little, all three brothers jump after him. And in that moment, they unlock that nimpo. And all of those mystic abilities they were just barely grasping at before. Donnie, who hadn't even attempted before, suddenly all makes sense, and they suddenly have that understanding, and they're ready. And the fight that ensues after they track down the Shredder, they make it to that crying titan, that holy land I talked about earlier, where the body of the crang is, where the Empyrean is. This fight is the most badass, gorgeous thing I've ever seen. In the time while the turtles were unlocking their nimpo, the Shredder was tracking down any other Hamato that existed. They didn't kill Splinter, they captured him to get that nimpo the way they didn't with Karai. Turns out they need Empyrean to do it. So, Cassandra, the only remaining Foot Clan member, is now a general, creating the magic circle ritual thing needed to extract the nimpo from Splinter. Splinter is captured in the middle of this crying titan, and the Shredder is ready with the Empyrean. The fight that ensues is chaotic and awesome, and this entire time we've been seeing Cassandra have minor doubts as the Foot Clan is pushed aside and wounded, and the Shredder doesn't care. She realizes she's not a villain. She doesn't actually want people to suffer. She doesn't know what she is, and she doesn't feel like she has a chance to figure it out anymore. But Splinter, as she's preparing to kill him, talks her down, and she has a change of heart. She helps him escape, and she breaks the circle she was just drawing. And as the turtles are fighting in the final attack, now that all of them are free, including Draxum and April and Cassandra, they are attacking in unison. Splinter is confronted with something. His sons have unlocked nimpo, but he hasn't. And in this final fight, they're channeling it so that the entire clan is attacking the Shredder. And by the entire clan, that includes his mother. And he gets to see her for the first time since he was a child. And it's revealed that she never left. That's the thing about the Hamatos. They're never alone. And with that revelation, the revelation that she's been watching over him the entire time, that he wasn't abandoned, that he has his sons with him, that he is happy with how his life went after being disappointed for so long, for losing his humanity, for losing his family, for losing his glory. He's happy. And he trusts his family. And he unlocks his nimpo. And with every single one of the Hamatos in existence using it, they defeat the Shredder. Orokusaki's soul is freed. He's not destroyed. And the good man who got corrupted by the dark armor is free to become one of the spirits. They win. And it's brilliant. And there's so much this show could do. The movie doesn't end it. This final season doesn't end it. This fight doesn't end it. This was the rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They aren't the team that we know. They aren't their selves until the end of the movie. This is them becoming what they were always meant to be. This is them growing into the heroes that they always had the potential to be. And there is so much this plot can still do. These characters have only just become what I think are the best turtles that have ever existed. They have character flaws that can still be expressed. They have relationships that can still be expressed. There are TMNT villains that haven't been addressed that can be: the Triceratons, Bishop, the EPF. There's so much this universe still has to offer. There's so much these boys still have to offer. At the very end of the last episode, Splinter gives the title of leader to Leo, to everyone's shock. The movie gets to express this and see him coming to terms and into the role, and it's brilliant. And we could see more. We could see more. This new dynamic, these characters as they grow up. What I want from this show is for it to continue. I don't want it rebooted. I don't want the movie retconned. I want the show 6 months, a year, 2 years after the movie to just pick up in time. Leo is the leader, them in their early 20s being the Turtles. There is so much they could do. The government is now aware of them. The public is now aware of them. Agent Bishop would be perfect here. You know? The Rat King. I want to see the Rat King. There's a particular fan fiction specifically about that called Verona, which, for adults, be careful. It's brilliant. It's gorgeous. This universe is ripe. And if we don't get it back, we will be losing so much. 2 shows of the same franchise can exist at the same time. We don't have to sacrifice Mutant Mayhem for this. But if we did, Rise is superior in every respect. In potential, in the universe. I'm sorry. I am not giving up this magic, world-building playground of fucking animation majesty for a high school AU. Mutant Mayhem's fine. It's boring. Its animation's interesting. Seth Rogen's fun. But Rise is something special. And we need it back. Watch the show if you haven't. And tell Nickelodeon, tell Netflix, tell anyone you can get your hands on, tell your mother to save Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Because the world will be a worse place if we don't get more of it. Now, I was going to end it there, but even though we're coming up on 2 hours of this autistic rambling session, I also want to break down the movie. Like I said before, again, you have to watch the show. Look, I'm not a spoilers person in the first. I wouldn't make a video like this if I thought that spoilers would ruin it. The only joke that I think you need to go into blind to fully experience, I didn't mention. It's still in beta. You can watch the show after watching this if you haven't before, but this will not give you the experience. This is not a horror game lore breakdown in a way where you can just watch this dumb idiot on the little YouTube site explain to you the plot and you've gotten the experience. No. Watch it. You need to. I've said this a million times. I am kind of a repeating record here. I don't care. Watch it. I will be inside your walls. The movie picks up, I personally believe, probably around 6 months to a year after the final battle. Like I said, full time gaps are kind of ambiguous. I personally headcanon that the show itself, the full 2 seasons, encompassed around 5 years of the Turtles' lives, starting when they were 13, 14, and 15 respectively, but all 15 in my opinion, and ending when they were around 18, 17, and 16. So the show picks up with the twins, Donnie and Leo, at 18, Raph at 19, and Mikey at 17. The movie is a small departure from the rating system that they were limited to in the show. It's immediately obvious that this was allowed to be darker, blatantly, than the show proper in the opening sequence. The opening sequence is of a blighted, barren future of war-torn Earth, destroyed, and a 40-year-old Leo clutching a fatal wound as he runs from an unknown enemy. The boy carrying him, an 18-year-old Casey Jones Jr., is saying, "We're gonna be okay, we're almost there, we just gotta run." In this battlefield, we can see glimpses of bodies, and I implore you to pause and look at each screenshot because you will see the casualties, and they do not hold back over who died. I didn't notice until think my fourth viewing, that bat was there, and then right to the right. I'm not okay. This old, war-torn Leo and Casey Jones Jr. are running. Leo is wounded, and they are about to be consumed and overwhelmed by these rabid mutant dogs, who we don't know what they are yet, before suddenly mystic chains pop out of nowhere, blowing back the enemy and revealing an even older-looking Michelangelo. Withered and tired and magic, he is the visual epitome of an old master who is seconds from being too gone. It's clear that his magic is draining him, and he is powerful, but he is dying. And Leo, looking at his wound, knowing it is too bad, looking around him and knowing that it is only him, Casey Jr., and Mikey left of his family. No one else survived. That's it. The Crang won. There's nothing that they can do in this timeline. And so, he makes one last Hail Mary. He tells his younger brother to kill himself for the cause. And can you imagine what kind of impact that must have had on his psyche? What he asks Mikey to do is to create a portal through time, both of them knowing full well that that amount of magical energy will kill him. The last chance that they have, not to save their world, because they both know that this isn't going to rewind time, it's going to make a new timeline. They're not trying to save their world. Their world died with their family. They're trying to save Casey, and Mikey, without hesitation, takes that and runs with it. He makes a portal, and Leo, in the sparkling ashed remains of his younger brother who he sent to the gallows after watching all of his family die over the last 20 years, sends the only member of his family who he loves left through the portal. And it's very clear. It's very clear he had time. He could have jumped in too. But after you tell your little brother to do that, you're not surviving, even if you have the option. No. And he dies in front of Casey's eyes right before the portal closes to a beam of red energy. And Casey is thrust back into a world he's never even seen before, of more people and more civilization than he ever realized could exist. And we get the title screen. We cut to a young Leo, carefree and excited. He's taking something very seriously, but it's a challenge of 125 boxes balanced on his head as he walks up the bridge. It's frankly quite impressive and also incredibly wasteful, because those boxes are full of pizza. He wins the challenge and is incredibly proud of himself. Raph is not present yet. Mikey is cheering for him openly, Donnie more reluctantly so as his record has been beaten, and Raph arrives as they're celebrating with whatever pizza didn't fall onto the street below. And Raph reveals that they should have been training right about now, and the tension between the shift in dynamic is immediately apparent. Leo is not taking this new role as leader seriously at all. Raph is not adjusting to not being the leader at all. Donnie and Mikey are just in the middle of this, not a power struggle, but a transition friction. Leo is clearly not taking things seriously, but not because he doesn't know it's serious. They all know that being the team of heroes that they are is more serious than what they thought it would be when they started. After the Shredder, they know that stakes can get high, but there isn't a villain right now that is threatening. Since the Shredder, things have been relatively calm, and Leo isn't ready for this responsibility. He wasn't asked to be leader, he was made to be leader, and he does not think he's right for the job. But he also knows that Raph can't handle it mentally. He was suffering as the leader, so he doesn't want to give it back, but he doesn't want to have it. It's actually a kind of wrapped around self-sacrifice to keep the role in the first place, but it doesn't look like it. It looks selfish because he has it and he's using it, but he's not using it to train them. He's not using it to be responsible. He's just goofing around like they're still young teenagers who were just doing this for fun. And Raph is not having it, and this is causing a friction because they can't communicate the way they need to. They're butting heads. This is established fairly quickly and is unable to be elaborated on too readily, as Donnie is unfortunately interrupting them with an alert of a villain attack. Hypnopotamus and some other guy, I don't know who that is, are stealing something from a museum. Seems like a low-stakes mission, but they go after it. And Leo is treating it like a low-stakes mission. He's not talking to his team. He's not referring to anyone. He hasn't been training any of the clearly pre-planned maneuvers and battle strategies that Mikey, Raph, and Donnie have been developing. He just runs off ahead on his own to try and take it all on himself in some flashy, show-offy manner. And while this is a fun chase and he is kind of getting it done, it's sloppy and he's not communicating, and they really only get the key because of the teamwork and the pre-planning that the others have without him. Raph stops the getaway car, and the item that Hypnopotamus and that other guy steal goes flying, and he realizes that's probably what they stole and goes to grab it. He says, "I got it," but Leo is being prideful and nonchalant, and he's not taking this seriously, so he's like, "Nah, I'm gonna snipe that win." And he portal chops Raph's projection to stop him from getting the item and allowing Leo to take the glory, which he fails to do, and this ends up giving this artifact to Hypnopotamus and the other guy, where it is then revealed that they're only working as delivery men for the Foot Clan, and that this is probably more serious than they thought. The Foot Clan absconds immediately after some ominous words about, after all these centuries, this is ours. And the other three are upset, but Leo is just like, still not taking it seriously. Back at the lair, Raph and Leo are arguing again about Leo just not taking any of this seriously. This ends up in a bigger fight. Splinter stops it, but showcases that even with all of his growth in the main series, he's still who he is. He's neglectful, he doesn't pay attention when it's not serious or when he doesn't think it's serious, and he's more interested in his TV shows than actually mediating the family. And it's at this point that the tension just simmers. They're not fighting anymore, but the conflict is still there and nothing's been resolved. We cut to Casey Jr., who is thrust into Times Square of all places, more people than he's ever seen in his life in this 3-block radius, and he's got one mission. His entire life has imploded in front of him. He has nothing but one mission, which is find the key, stop the crang. But he has no idea how to do that. The key is supposed to be stolen today, and he doesn't know where it is. He doesn't know who's going to steal it. How is he supposed to find the key? He was given this photo by the older Leo before he thrust through the portal. A photo that clearly that Leonardo has kept on his person for 20 years as a source of comfort. He gave it to Casey not only as a memento, but as a functional drawing of the item that they need, which obviously is the one that Leo just lost. And looking at the photo half, he realizes, my master will know. Leonardo will know. He's the hero of the rebellion. He'll clearly have a plan. So he needs to find the turtles. And to do that, he should find April, because that's the only lead he has. She's holding a college book in the photo, so he goes to East Laird University. A good homage. So April, side note, has gone from, I think, a freshman in high school at the beginning to a freshman in college at the end of the show, further emphasizing how much time has passed. They're all adults now. They're still the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but barely. So Casey Jr. goes off to find April O'Neil. We cut to April O'Neil, who is interviewing a college professor and saying that she is on the newspaper for the college, and she steals his identification to break into a lab that she suspects the college is using for a secret government program for a super toxic herbicide bomb. She discovers this herbicide and is recording it for her story, and then leaves the campus, where she immediately lays Casey, this war-torn, grew up in the apocalypse fighter, out immediately because she's April O'Neil and she can defeat anyone. She sees the photo he's holding of all of the turtles and herself and is immediately concerned. She takes the knocked out Casey back to the lair and they tie him up for an interrogation. Once he wakes up, he sees all of his dead family staring at him, and he's happy, he's excited to see them, but they immediately start interrogating him. Why does this random human have a picture of him? Why was he looking for April? Why is he wearing genius-built apparel that's trademarked? And he explains everything. They don't believe him at first until he mentions that the enemy that they lost to was the Crang, which Splinter recognizes, because even while he wasn't paying attention or acknowledging all of the Hamato stuff as a kid, even he remembers the old horror stories about the real enemy, the one who created the dark armor, the one who almost destroyed the world, the Crang. And that's enough legitimacy for the turtles to believe him. And he relays to them that the key to their prison dimension is stolen today, that the invasion starts today because that item is used to unlock and release the remaining Crang and the Technodrone. When he shows them the drawing, and it's revealed that this item that will destroy the planet is the one that Leo just lost in a bout of cocky glory sniping, the rest of the family is, unsurprised but frustrated. And though it's stressful, they do know where the key is. They know who has it. It's the Foot Clan. So they go after it. And I want to think about that for a second. Because up until Casey interrupts the timeline, making it branch off, everything that has happened up until this point is what happened to the Leonardo we saw die. So that Leonardo, who lived for 20 years in an apocalyptic wasteland watching his family die one by one by one, is the reason that was happening. Not in a way that he could actually blame himself. He was a teenager who made a mistake, but can you imagine living with that and the daily consequences of everyone dying? Jesus Christ. They find the Foot Clan's hideout just as they are about to create the ceremony to release the Crang. And in the fight, they fail just in time for the door to open and 3 Crang to emerge, the only 3 survivors of the 1,000 years of imprisonment. But while the Crang are through, the Technodrone is not. So they still have time. But all of them are overwhelmed. The Crang are more powerful than they'd ever expect, and they can do something that none of them planned for. The Crang, being the source of all magic in this universe, lock away their nimpo. And without that overpowered family ability, they're just martial artists, and they were already struggling against the Crang. Splinter is ambiguously wounded, and Raph is panicking. He can tell this is a losing fight, but he doesn't realize the amount of risk retreating would inflict, because he doesn't realize it's now or never to get that key, and he tells them to retreat. But he's not the leader. He clashes with Leo, who says, we don't retreat, we need the key, and Casey, who is reaffirming, if we don't get that key, something so much worse is going to come out of there and we will have no chance. But Raph is at a boiling point. He has been struggling with Leo and communicating for months, a year, who knows how long since the power switch, and his dad is in his arms passed out, and his family is at risk, and he tells Donnie to get the escape pods going, and Donnie agrees. All of the escape pods get activated and start automatically removing each Hamato from the situation. And just as the pod for Leo is closing around him, Casey says, we have to get that key. And he makes a split-second decision to stop the pod from closing and goes after the key on his own. Raph is the only one left who isn't in a pod flying away back to the lair. And in an impressive feat of simply just martial skill, Leo makes his way across the room dodging the crang and gets the key, but not without making himself incredibly vulnerable, and is about to die to one of the spikes, only to be saved by Raph putting himself in between. And Raph is horrifically damaged, especially when you remember 2012, that shells aren't armor. They are, but they're not a separate piece of a turtle. That has nerves, that's bone. That hurt. And Leo is simply left to look as he sees his big brother speared through because of his own decisions, and Raph puts his escape pod onto Leo, and Leo is forcibly taken out of the situation. Raph's fate unknown, surrounded by enemies far too powerful for him. But Leo has the key. All of the remaining Hamatos are sent back to the lab in the pods, and Leo, arriving a few seconds after them in Raph's pod, causes concern. Casey sees he got the key, but Leo is boiling. He's pissed. He is not thinking straight, and his only goal is getting Raph back. He doesn't care about the key. He doesn't care about Casey. He's mad at Casey. He was blaming Casey for knowing this would happen, but it's obvious at this point that they have changed the past. So he demands they go after Raph immediately. They ask for a plan, they ask for anything, and he's like, no, we're just going to ninja in, ninja out, and save my brother. I don't give a shit about anything else. He's getting worse. But he's still the leader, and Donnie and Mikey are not willing at this moment to fight him on this. And in first viewing, maybe that seems a little too passive of them. But this power struggle has been going on for who knows how long. And they do trust Leo with their lives. And Leo is capable. And they are stressed. I think the somewhat muted behavior of both of them, because Raph and Leo are really the highlights of this movie, still makes sense for their characters. And it's mostly them not knowing which side to pick, and them wanting to let Leo fill out this role naturally that allows them to defer to him even when he's being a fool. So they head out. April and Splinter stay behind to try and destroy the key, and the Turtles and Casey go after Raph. Casey almost reveals that everyone in his time has died, but he's stopped as they make it into the subway tunnels, and the way to where they are tracking Raph is blocked by this growth of eldritch abomination, horror, and tentacles, and viscera, and they have to continue on foot. The crang design in the movie is simultaneously some of the best and grossest and well-designed eldritch horror that I've ever seen, and also the stupidest shit. Everything about the crang is brilliantly designed. The Technodrone, their infection, the monstrosities they create as they forcibly puppet live zombies of human beings, the eyes, the tongues, the odd and unnerving combination of meat and plant. It's great. But then you look at the crang, then you look at the three crang, the three characters, the villains, and they're like, you're spam? They don't look like brains like before. They look like uncut ham at a deli. They're cubes. They're Super Meat Boy. What is happening? Why do they look like weird dildos and everything else around them is the greatest horror that you've ever seen? The juxtaposition is, I don't know, somewhere between good and jarring. Part of me really enjoys the juxtaposition because it takes away some of the horror, but some of me is very disappointed that it takes away some of that horror, because the stakes here and the pain here, the horror is brilliant, and then you get these fucking clowns right in the center of it who are a threat, but why do they look like that? Regardless, We briefly see that the Krang have captured Raph instead of killing him, and are interrogating him as to where his brothers would have hidden the key. He obviously would never have given up anything. He would rather die first and let Raph curse 2023, but they infect him, and this scene is, like I said, visceral and uncomfortable and terrifying for a Nickelodeon movie. It's brilliant. I love it. And they forcibly search his mind to find the location of the lair. Krang Prime sends the sister Krang off to find the key, and he and brother Krang go off with the now mutated husk of the Foot Clan, grotesque and deformed, infected in the same way that Raph was, into these beasts of viscera and human waking torment, toward the tallest building in New York City to open the gate again for the Technodrome, once Sister Krang gets the key. And now, Leo and the gang, underneath that building, are trying to fight through and get their brother back. Now, the other three, Casey, Mikey, and Donnie, are like, we should go a different direction. This doesn't feel right, but Leo is blindly beating his head against the wall to get his brother back because he's blaming himself. He's not wanting to face how much he fucked up. He's feeling cocky because Casey called him the greatest ninja of all time in the future. He is ignoring the situation and just blindly moving forward, and they get ambushed. Mikey and Donnie are separated, trapped inside the turtle tank as it is slowly crushed from the outside, and Casey and Leo are dropped into an elevator shaft, where Casey gives Leo the biggest dressing down I have ever heard. Holy shit. How will this man ever recover? But he does recover, and it's exactly what he needs, because they're perfect together and they're married, Your Honor. And Leo finally gets out of his ass, and he acknowledges what he doesn't want to acknowledge. Not that he can't do everything alone. Not that he fucked up, but that he's avoiding the responsibility that he didn't want to acknowledge was putting his family's life on the line for his immaturity. And as he moves forward, he is going to take this in a good and perhaps a bit too far direction. So Casey and Leo get back up the elevator shaft and move forward into the building, while Mikey and Donnie both contact April to help them get out because they don't have much time. April and Splinter are beating their heads against the wall, trying everything they can think of to destroy this key, but it is completely indestructible. And as they are arguing, trying to figure out if maybe they know somebody with lava, Sister Krang breaks into their new lair, and they escape. Now they're on a chase, and they get the notification from Mikey and Donnie that they are in trouble. April is briefly cornered by Sister Krang, and that is when she finds out that herbicide she stole is very effective against the Krang. And while I personally would like to and really enjoy this concept as something integral to the timeline that Casey grew up in as basically their only weapon against the Krang, and it has a lot of potential, it's not actually used as effectively as I would have liked in the movie. April uses it to defeat Sister Krang. It's used to help them get away. It helps save Donnie and Mikey, but it could have been used better. She had more and she kind of used it too liberally. But that's a nitpick, to be completely honest. But she takes out the Sister Krang's eye with it, and her and Splinter escape to go save Donnie and Mikey from the tank by using the same stuff to disintegrate the tentacles trying to crush it. And now the four of them go to meet up with Casey and Leo, who are inside the building looking for Raph. They find Raph directly above them in a pod. And as they cut him out, at first it seems like he's okay, but then he immediately attacks Leo. And for like the briefest of moments, it feels like it's not immediately apparent that it's because he's possessed, and you think, oh, this is worse than we thought it was. But no, he would never. This isn't Raph. Raph is completely controlled by the Krang, and we and his brothers are forced to watch this very painful looking transformation as the crang burst out of his eye from inside of him and slowly takes over his entire body. And the clan is forced to retreat. Leo is not wanting to, but they have to. They are overwhelmed, and April uses all of the herbicide she has left to grant them even the chance of escape. But Raph, as a zombie, got the key, and they are in a distant building away from the Empire State Building or whatever building they're on, and they're watching the world end. The crang open the gate and the Technodrone comes in, and everyone else has decided they've lost. Casey thinks he failed his mission. Everyone is like, there's nothing left we can do. What can we do? But Donnie says something about how time travel can't change the future. That's just not how physics works. He didn't want to say it, but they were doomed from the beginning. And that's when Leo realizes Donnie's wrong, which that's always good for him. And he realizes they've changed the future already. Raph didn't become a crang zombie in their timeline. They didn't briefly get the key in Casey's timeline. They are changing things, which means they have hope. They can fix this if they figure out how. So he asks them for the first time in the movie, all right, let's brainstorm together. I don't have the answers. What do we got? And they realize, okay, they can't destroy it. What if they can just push it back into the prison dimension? And Leo is like, that's a great idea. Let's do it. Donnie, do you want to fly a spaceship? And he's like, fuck yeah, I do. They split into 2 teams. They split into 2.5 teams. Splinter, Casey, and April go onto the ground to get to the building and acquire the key. Keep the gate open long enough for Donnie to pilot the Technodrone back through the portal and then close it as soon as they're home free. While Leo saves Raph, everything will be okay. That's the plan. We got this. Once Mikey, Donnie, and Leo make it to the Technodrone, Leo breaks off from the other 2 to look for Raph, and Donnie and Mikey try and take over the helm where the brother Krang is currently driving it. Donnie has to inject himself into the biomechanics of the Krang, just as viscera and disgusting and eldritch as the rest of this species. The only way to pilot it is to immerse yourself in it. And Donnie, the sensory overload autistic king he is not having a good time. But he does it. And honestly, I could never... Good luck, world. Unless Rule 34 is right about what's inside that Technodrone, I'll let you guys die, thanks. And meanwhile, Leo finds Raph, but he's still controlled, and Krang Prime watches over as he instructs this zombie of his older brother to kill Leo. This cocky bastard of a villain is very well written, but he's 2D in a good way. He's just a villain. He's prideful. He thinks power is the most important thing. He thinks honor and duty are weaknesses for weaker races, and that the Krang should gift themselves to the entire universe. He's simple, he's evil, very well done, and once he's in the suit, it's a lot less funny to look at him. Leo is desperately fighting against Raph, almost entirely on the defense, because he can't fight him. He's just trying to get him to snap out of it. And while you might say it's a narrative contrivance, that the emotional appeal Leo does, the heartfelt apology he eventually gives to Raph in this state, is what gets Raph to overcome the infection, is kind of a cop-out. I get where you're coming from, but narratively and emotionally, this is brilliant for me. I like it. I think it's good. And it works for their nimpo. Their nimpo is a alteration of regular magic that is based on and powered by their trust and love for each other. So an emotional appeal makes sense for it to be like given back to them, because this determination, Raph getting out of that infection, is what allows all 4 of them, Donnie and Mikey, being captured in the process of this fight. After Donnie does manage to change the trajectory of the Technodrone, they're both captured, and this appeal and Raph getting past this infection is what inspires them to get their nimpo back. And this is the moment, cheesy and heartfelt as it is brilliantly when they actually become the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And it's also the first time they ever say it properly in the show. And they held off for a while to say it properly, and I think it is served very well here. It, like I said, it is cheesy as all hell, and maybe you'll think it's too much, but look, no matter how good a show is, cheese is not a detriment if done well, and I think it was done well. They get their nimpo back and they start I'm gonna say it again, as I've said a dozen times in this. Oh my god, how long have I been talking? The fight is gorgeous. The choreography, the synchronicity, the camera, the sheer majesty of this fight is gorgeous. It is a spectacle. I would say that even if you don't watch the show, watch this scene, but watch the show, you fucking numpty. Watch it, watch it, watch it. And even with all of the badassery that is in this scene, even with Mikey throwing an entire goddamn building at the Krang, none of this means anything. The Krang blows them away with a single finger. Because it was never going to work. They were never going to be able to beat these guys with brute force. No amount of Hamato nimpo, no amount of familial bonds would have worked, or else they wouldn't have had a doomed timeline to begin with. No. They needed to get them back into the prison dimension. And with his brothers injured, with Donnie and Mikey thrown off of the Technodrome and into the air, falling thousands of feet to their imminent death, Leo realizes something. They're not gonna all make it out. He sends Raph off the building to save their brothers, and he makes peace with what he's about to do. He turns on his communicator and he tells Casey that as soon as that Technodrome is through the portal, as soon as he says that he and the Krang are through the portal, to close it. And he knows he's not going to come back. Casey begs him not to. He already lost Leo once in the last 24 hours. He doesn't want to lose him again. Because they're married, Your Honor. But it's not about him. And that's what he learned throughout the movie. And he might be interpreting it a bit too far, actually. Because now he might be a good leader. Now he might be taking his team into account. He might be valuing them and their opinions over anything else. He's always valued their lives high. But now he's not valuing his own. And it's going to work. And this is even more reason why I want a third season, why I want this to move forward, because Leo in this moment internalizes something incredibly dangerous. And I want to see that explored. We don't get to. We get to see it work. He sacrifices himself and he uses a portal to force him and the Krang into the prison dimension, and Casey closes the gate, sobbing. And they all accept that Leo's dead. The Krang are defeated. The Technodrome was only halfway through the portal and it is destroyed in spectacular fashion. So not only are they recaptured, not only is Krang Prime forbidden from getting back into the universe, but his main weapon, it can never be used again. They've well and truly defeated this man. And he is about to spend the rest of eternity taking that rage out on the only thing left that he can. Leo. And the brutality of this scene is immense, especially when you, again, consider that their shells are structural. They're not armor, they're bone. That's his spine and his ribs. It is his structure, it is him. And that thing definitely shattered. Boy's in pain. We cut to Raph, Mikey, and Donnie just barely surviving the fall with Raph's protective nimpo and watching the Technodrome explode with their brother on the wrong side. And Donnie and Raph are paralyzed in grief. But Mikey has been told this entire movie that his future self was a powerhouse, was basically a demigod of magic, and could create portals. Portals much stronger than Leo's that transcend time so they could probably transcend dimensions. He's been trying to open one to save Donnie and himself in the turtle tank, to help throughout this entire movie, and he's been mostly useless because he can't unlock this thing that a version of him who has had 20 more years of practice was able to. But now with his brother on the line, he tries again. Raph is ready to give up. He tells Mikey it's over, but Mikey says that Leo never gave up on them, so he's not giving up on Leo, and he does it. But if you recall what the magic did to Mikey in the Doomed timeline, you start to see the cracks fissuring across his fingers and his arms, spreading into him across his eyes and his body, and you know that if he continues this, it'll be a trade-off, and Mikey will die. But in the Doomed timeline, he was alone. In the Doomed timeline, Leo was already going to die. Leo didn't have access to his nimpo in that timeline. He had to do it on his own. But if there's one thing we know about the Hamato clan, is that you are never alone. And Raph and Donnie funnel their nimpo into Mikey and take half the burden, their arms cracking alongside them, but none of them being consumed by it as the portal opens and they see their brother. And with their combined magic, Raph extending his arm with his projection to grab onto Leo, Mikey holding the portal open, and Donnie shooting the final blow to keep the crang at bay while they pull their brother to safety, they save him. And he was not expecting that, but he knew it would happen because it's them. And they win. They're definitely injured, they're definitely traumatized. They've got a new Casey running around, and the city is decimated. But it's New York, it's resilient, and it rebuilds. And they heal, and Casey gets to try a slice for the first time. And that's where we end the movie. And this is where the franchise has been paused for over a year. Leo is finally taking the full potential of being a leader seriously. They are all more powerful than they've ever been. They have more family and more love and trust in each other than they've ever had. And now the world knows about them in this huge public display of magic and aliens and the turtles that saved the world. They have a new character and a new Casey to explore. Leo's got plenty to explore and deal with in his mind now. Mikey's got an entire new magic power system to explore and expound upon. This world is ripe. They will always be ready to rise to a new occasion. And we can get it back if we do not give up. So, thank you for watching all the way through that incredibly long video. I've never made something that long, and I did it in one long autistic fugue state. It was amazing. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed recording that. I'm sorry I got a few minor details wrong, mostly because I was working on memory. So some episodes that were singular I said were multiple, and some that were multiple I said were singular, and got the order of operations wrong a couple times. But overall, I'm glad you liked the video, and hopefully I'm also really glad that you love Rise. Whether you're on the side of the fandom that heavily disagrees with the kind of fan art I make, or if you're one of my people and love to make the turtles kiss, it doesn't matter. This show is important to all of us. It's to go on a personal note before I end this video, which wasn't intentional. I was supposed to just make an outro card, but Rise has invigorated me creatively in a way nothing else has since I was a child and wanted to be an artist in the first place. And it has also, along with the turtles kissing side of the fandom, helped me heal from things much darker than a kids show retrospective could handle. But I'm glad Rise existed in one form or another, and I will continue to fight for its return, but even if it never does, it already made an amazing impact on a lot of people, me especially. I don't care if you don't like turtles kissing. I don't care if you really like the rabbit instead. I just care that we like Rise. And I'm glad you're here with me. Thank you to all the friends I've made on Twitter. Bree, Nix, everybody. I'm glad I've met all of you. And I look forward to making more stuff. And I look forward to teasing you, aunties. Hopefully we can keep it light. I hope fandom in general can get back to the discourse level where we have squicks and no TPs and we fight about who should be with who, but not doxing, not death threats. Fiction is a very important space, and it's a space that can have things you're not comfortable with, things that I'm not comfortable with, but it's still important to have. Everybody's got their own limits. Media literacy is incredibly important, and the separation of fictional enjoyment and real-life endorsement is something you need to understand. I will always look forward to bantering with you, but you need to understand that there is people behind those accounts that you find make squicky content. And we're not bad. We're not two-dimensional villains that you're completely carte blanche to tell to fucking Roblox themselves. It's unacceptable. And yet somehow, even with all of you who take it too far, this fandom is still so fucking beautiful. I can't get over it. Sorry. A bit of a tangent. Again, thank you for watching the video. I hope you have a good day, guys. Thanks for being with me. It's been a treat.